So, I think I have something to say to everybody here. Saw is back! Hey everyone, it's Movie Lover 120 here, and I'm here with a brand new movie review. This is two films. I mean, two kinds of categories for this review. First, it's a movie that came out in 2021 this weekend, and two, it's yet another Saw film. So yeah, this review is for none other than Spiral from the Book of Saw. So, I just finished watching the film. So, alright, before I start, when I first heard that there's going to be another Saw movie, and it was not going to be a direct sequel to Jigsaw, and it was actually going to be produced by MB starring Chris Rock, who's a comedian, guys. I had some skeptic thoughts. I mean, I was kind of worried this was going to be like too much comedy or something like that. I was going to kind of feel more like a comedy movie, really, more than a Saw movie. But on a silver lining, director Darren Bousman, director of Saw 2 and Saw 3 and Saw 4, was coming back to the series to direct this one. So that gave me some silver lining. And more silver lining was that Chris Rock is actually a big fan of the Saw movies and came up with the story himself. And was also going to be starring another famous Hollywood actor, Samuel L. Jackson. This is pretty crazy because Saw movies usually don't really star big name celebrities. They just cast a lot of unknowns, and ones that are like, oh, they're in this movie, then you just don't hear about them really again. You don't really see them in much after that. Like one rare exception, I guess, is Carrie Elways, and Danny Glover for the first film. And then Elways did come back for a little bit for Saw the Final Chapter, but other than that, that's kind of about it. Everyone else is kind of just unknown actors, and Tobin Bell wasn't really well known when the first one came out, and Saw pretty much made him a well-known horror icon, so guess there's that. But anyway, the plot of this movie, well, working in the shadow of his father, an esteemed police veteran played by Samuel Jackson, brass detective Ezekiel Zeke Banks, who's played by Chris Rock, and his new rookie partner, played by Max Minghella, take charge of a grisly investigation into murders that are eerily reminiscent of the city's gruesome past. Unwillingly entrapped in a depending mystery, Zeke finds himself at the center of the killer's morbid game. So yeah, that's the plot of the movie. Kind of like most of like any other Saw movie, really. If you know what to expect, like there's an investigation, a bunch of traps, and a twist, like you'd find. And I gotta say, so it was supposed to come out last year, but we all know the COVID-19 pandemic delayed it all the way to this year and this week. With that being said, finally got to watch the movie after a year of waiting, and I gotta say, surprisingly, I thought it was pretty good. Yeah, I think it's probably the third best in the series, behind the first two. I think Spiral's by far the strongest entry into the franchise since the original trilogy, A fantastic cast, still some insane gory traps, great twists, and an awesome soundtrack. It's like it was like a very interesting new entry to the franchise, and in keeping with 2017's Jigsaw, it was way more engaging than several of the 4, 5, 6, 7 in Jigsaw. It gives audiences deep in characters and scenarios that normally than what are usually not really shown in the series, and I really liked that they went a more different direction. I mean, it's still like any Saw movie, but they went a way more different direction. Not unlike Jigsaw, where they rehashed several plot twists or several plot points from certain sequels into one movie. Try to cram them there. That was a big flaw, Jigsaw. Because I used to think Jigsaw was fourth best. Well, now Jigsaw would be number 5. Because I found Saw 6 way better than that movie after a rewatch. And the traps, I like that the traps were very clever and gruesome, as fans of the series would expect. Like, the traps aren't like just over the top, gratuitously over the top, like with 4 to 7 or the previous 5 movies, I gotta say. But they're definitely still clever and gruesome, as fans of the series would definitely expect. This one, they actually don't target just random like criminals like with the most of the other movies do. This one, they target cops, which is a very interesting choice, and in many ways actually kind of reflects the growing crimes and what are happening in our world now. And it's cries for reforming the police, but it also kind of reflects growing cries for reforming the police, but does it in an extreme way and balances out that there are good cops in the mix who serve and protect. And like I've said, like Chris Rock also serves as a producer of this film, which is perfect, which is very perfect, especially knowing that he's a big fan of Saw. So it's a good thing they got a big name celebrity who's a big fan of the Saw series. Whereas he was also good in the role he played in. It was refreshing. It's probably the first time in a very long time since we got to see him play a darker, more dramatic character. He still has some moments of clever riffs every now and then, but they're appropriate placed within the film, and they're not like over in almost every scene he's in. They're only at the right times. He's serious when he needs to be, and he does the riffs when they're necessary. And they don't take away the fact that Zeke is this troubled and driven individual. So Zeke was a pretty interesting character, probably the most interesting characters in the Saw series in a very long time. Thought way better character than Logan, I gotta say. Even his new partner, I forget like Maximum Gilla character's his name, but even he felt like a better character. Most of the characters were better than Logan, I gotta say. Well, Logan from Jigsaw, anyways. The supporting cast was even solid, and while cast, especially Samuel L. Jackson, however, Samuel L. Jackson doesn't really get much screen time, unfortunately, which is kind of a downer. So if you're expecting like Samuel L. Jackson to get more of a role, he's only like a few scenes up until the end. That's kind of about it. Supporting cast is solid. I'm able to identify the individual behind the killings fairly early. There's not enough like red herrings that may keep like audiences guessing, and with director Darren Lynn Bousman. Darren Lynn Bousman made a very perfect return to the franchise. Like I said, he directed the best sequel in the series, Saw 2. He directed the third film. Also a pretty good movie, not as good as the first two. And then he directed the fourth film, which kind of started to make the Saw series go downhill. But I like that Saw 4 was at least a midquel to Saw 3 during the same time as Saw 3. Like, if you watch Saw 3 and 4 back to back, they're kind of like one big 3-hour movie, and then you kind of find Saw 4 a little better if you kind of watch those two back to back. He made a solid return to the franchise, and kept the dark and dirty look of the film's trap sequences, and while they are gory, there's a cleverness to them that should delight fans of the series. Really loved how this movie was very, very gory. Like, this movie was still brutal, despite the change in tone. Like, it was still as brutal as any kind of Saw movie. Like, really gory traps, really gory deaths. Like, the opening trap of the ton was like I even cringed a few times at some of the traps. Like, I think probably the most extreme trap was probably that. There's this trap like where he has that like little hockey helmet. One victim has this hockey helmet on his head, and the trap like kind of slowly starts to pull off his fingers, which is pretty extreme. That was pretty cringeworthy, and pretty brutal. And then I think the second most other brutal trap to sit through in this movie was probably the one where all the glass starts. This guy's like chained up to his ceiling like this, and then Zeke's trying to find this key to free him, but then this like little device starts like shooting broken glass at the victim and like starts like piercing his back, and it's a, there's a lot of gory scenes for this film. They're still pretty gory. Like, in the end, Spiral is enough of what fans of the franchise would expect, and it fuses some interesting new characters and scenarios to make one of the more complete and enjoyable entries in the series. Like, it tells an interesting story, a new story that feels different compared to the other Saw movies, but not too different, where it doesn't resemble a Saw movie. Filled with sadistic traps, and Saw fans will not be disappointed with the amount of gore in this movie. That being said, however, now on to the bad qualities. The bad qualities were that, like most of the Saw movies, this movie feels way too short. Like, that's my problem with the franchise. Almost every movie in the franchise feels very, very short. Kind of wish they added like 30 more minutes of this and kind of tried to develop it a little more, but I mean, I think the only two films in the series that kind of feel like have a runtime like actual movies would probably only really be the first and third one. Probably those are the only two really long ones. The only two that kind of have runtimes like actual films, and other than that, the rest of the films feel really short. Another kind of big down quality with it. And then, I'm not going to reveal the plot twist for those who have not seen the movie yet. Like, what? There is a plot twist in the movie, and the plot twist reveal is very lacking compared to previous movies. It's better than Jigsaw's plot twist, but it's still pretty lacking to the other ones, especially like the first two. First two and sixth one. First film, second film, and sixth film probably have the best plot twists. To me, and best endings. And this one is kind of a bit lacking, but however, they still play Hello Zap. They still play the Hello Zap theme in it, and you'll probably like this part. It is actually not remixed. Like, Hello Zap theme was done better than how Jigsaw did it. I mean, I didn't really like how Jigsaw did the Zap theme. It felt way too remixed. Felt way too recycled from all the other remixes. So yeah, it's good to see them just play the original version of Hello Zap in the first movie, in the ending for this film. So, other than that, Spiral from the Book of Saw indicates a brighter future for the Saw franchise. I think it's safe to say that Saw may finally be back to its roots. Now, my recommendation, if you are a Saw fan, check this movie out when you are able to. Or if the theaters are open in your area, then check it out. Or you've probably already seen it by then. If you're a Saw fan anyways. If you are not a Saw fan, don't bother with this film, because you're probably not going to like it. If you don't like Saw, you probably will also not like this movie. But I'm a pretty big Saw fan, despite the last 5 films being very lacking. I'm still a fan of the franchise, even if the last 5 films weren't that good. I have to say, I think this is probably the best film in the series since Saw 2. It's my 3rd favorite of the series, and here's how I would probably rank it. I am going to give Spiral a 7.5 out of 10. And there we go. That wraps up my review for Spiral, and that officially wraps up all my Saw movie reviews. I have successfully completed the whole franchise. There we go. All 9 movies. Well, actually, technically, this isn't the last installment of the series because apparently a month before this movie came out, they were already planning a 10th installment of the Saw series, except Darren Lynn Bousman has hinted it's not going to be a sequel to this. It's kind of going to be more of a direct sequel to Jigsaw, be more titled Saw 9, but it kind of depends on people's reactions to this movie. I mean, this movie kind of had a slow opening weekend, unfortunately, at the box office. Well, then again, we're still in the pandemic, and theaters are still closed in certain areas. So I guess the slow weekend kind of made sense. But just have to see how it does on streaming, maybe. We'll just see about that. But there is also kind of a downside. Apparently in May 2021, also this month, Darren Lynn Bousman has hinted that he could possibly bring back Detective Hoffman, which is a dumbass move because one, Hoffman died at the end of Saw 3D. Kevin Greutert even confirmed it in the director's commentary. It's been confirmed everywhere. Detective Hoffman is dead. Leave this character alone, please. I swear to God, if they bring him back for the next movie, if it gets made, I am not watching it if they do that, because that is probably the dumbest idea I've ever seen. That's like bringing back John Kramer or Amanda Young and turning them into like demons like Jason or Michael and turning them into either one of those. Make them all deformed corpses going around killing people. Which they're not. They're just normal human beings. They're not Freddy or Jason or Michael. Hoffman, Amanda, and John are neither of those. Like, if you're gonna bring back someone, like, maybe, like, bring back... I would like to see what happened to Dr. Gordon after he locked Hoffman in the bathroom. Like, maybe I'd like to see that character come back, and even though I'm not a fan of the Logan character, maybe still continue his story. Just continue his story, maybe, because... Just, I'm one of those, as long as it's not bringing back Hoffman, as long as it's just leaving Hoffman dead and that's it. That character had his run, it's over. Now, alright, enough about me talking. That'll be it for this video. Thank y'all for watching. And if you like this and want to see more, and don't forget to like and subscribe to Movie Lover 120.